So Druid versus Rogue coming out. So, what were you thinking? Were you thinking that the Hunter was going to come out first? Is that why you started with the Rogue?
Well, I know that his lineup is going to be Warlock, Druid, Rogue, because we have to share lineups ahead of time.
Innervate Coin Yeti, the dream,
dream. It's already not looking good for me. I know that Hunter and Warlock are in his lineup. I don't want to play against the Druid most, and I actually think that this is a really good lead by Reynad because he was able to read the fact that I'm going to interpret that he's playing either Warlock or Hunter in his lineup, so I have 2 or 3 strong ones, and that Rogue decks are made to basically beat both of those decks. So when he leads with Druid here, it's not what I wanted to see, certainly, and almost certainly his strongest lead. And then speaking of strongest leads,
this is the turn 1 nightmare, man.
This is probably the best turn 1 play in the game, which is turn 1 Chillwind Yeti.
Yeah, brutal. So Loot Hoarder, I mean, what else are you going to do? You got to come down with Loot Hoarder. Now, I mean, seeing this, what are you thinking here? Are you thinking, like in your head, what are you looking for to get rid of this Yeti?
I'm looking that it's going to deal me a bunch of damage here. So I've actually had 2 extremely good draws in a row between these Backstab and this SI7 agent. So I'm forced to use both of these. And now a lot of people are thinking, why would you use this SI7 agent on this 4-3 Chillwind Yeti? It's just going to be able to trade with your 3-3. And the thinking behind this is, if he's got something like Earthen Ring Farseer or Mark of the Wild, he's able to keep it alive if I don't put it at 1 health.
Yeah.
And while Earthen Ring Farseer will also keep it alive, it leaves it vulnerable to the cards that I have in my hand. So important to be dealing 2 damage there with the SI7.
He had two Mark of the Wilds in his hand.
Right.
So had you not done that, it would have been, a free card.
Right. It would have been disastrous for me. I probably would have been unable to recover the game.
Yeah. I mean, if you get that far behind off of the minion that came down in turn 1, you're looking pretty bad. But we do see.
A second Chillwind Yeti.
A second Chillwind Yeti, plus that Golem. I mean, those Golems are so efficient. Early on, they're a very, very strong card.
Right, it ends up being a lot of incremental damage for Druid decks. And Rogue particularly has kind of a tough time dealing with these because it's so easy to deal at 1 damage, and then it's not left to backstab. And then with the 2-1 token out, again, it's really easy to deal 1 damage, but by the time that token's been made, you're either usually out of mana or you have to backstab that one, which is not exactly one of your best plays. So this is certainly one of the hardest turns of the game, despite how quickly I play it.
Yeah, so we do see that Azure Drake coming down for that card draw. I mean, now, the backstab in hand, what are you thinking here? Are you thinking that it makes any sense to play? What are you looking at here? What are you thinking, now that you've played this, you see what you drew, what's your thought process here?
This is certainly the biggest turn, I think, to consider using backstab, because if I don't backstab here, it's pretty unlikely that I'm going to be able to backstab the next turn unless he plays more minions. So I was willing to just sacrifice the Azure Drake, accepting it as dealing 4 damage and gaining 4 health in this position, in order to, again, try to recover my board state by using my life total as a resource in this matchup. Yeah. Because if he doesn't have huge follow-ups in these coming turns, that's basically the only way I can win. Yeah. So now, when his hand is in this sort of construction, this is very lucky as far as I'm concerned, because he's not going to be able to follow this up really strong. So when he uses swipe here and he continues to attack, it certainly looks really bad, but I'm actually feeling pretty good about it because it means he doesn't have something like a Druid of the Claw. Yeah,
that's interesting. So, I mean, what do you think about, there was a lot of different ways that he could have dealt with that. I mean, what do you think about, he could have obviously marked his Yeti, attacked in, he could have even, marked the Golem and traded, he could have, used the Wrath and a hero power. There was a ton of different ways he could have done that. Now, I mean, what do you think, was that the right play?
It's difficult to say one way or the other because he wants to save these Marks of the Wild to put critical pressure on me as opposed to necessarily putting incremental advantage on me. So when I don't use backstab on his Chillwind Yeti, I think what he's thinking is that I don't have backstab.
Okay.
So when he doesn't use Mark of the Wild there, that's certainly his main consideration. And then I think at this point, with the way that this is developing, because he's not having these huge 6 and 7 mana minions that you traditionally see in Druid, he's going to want to be using these marks as sort of reach for the late game.
Now, I mean, with Prep, you have the Gadgets and Auctioneer. You have obviously Deadly Poison plus the South Sea Pirate. I mean, there's a lot of different options here. Gonna go with that Auctioneer. Gonna play that down. And I mean, the South Sea Deckhand. I mean, you go with that. I mean, you're trying to. Are you just thinking you need to get the board clear at this point? Are you thinking you need to just keep the kind of tempo going?
Clearing the board is certainly critical here, and actually South Sea Deckhand you see pulling a little bit of a different trick than it normally does.
Yeah.
Usually that's there for Cold Blood.
Yeah.
But as it stands, I get to clear his board here, and with this Gadget Zane Auctioneer again, because he wasn't able to have a huge follow-up with such as early pressure that it ends up, I think, putting me in advantage even out at a low life. But because of the way his deck's being played, I also have to be very mindful of something like a Force of Nature Savage Roar combo.
Yeah.
So I'm also thinking about how I can kill my opponent as quickly as possible, not necessarily just sustaining and being able to clear the board every turn.
Yeah, and I mean, interesting because now he's left with these 2 Mark of the Wilds, but I mean they're not as useful as they perhaps would have been earlier. Both his Yetis are gone, both his Golems are gone. He has the Argus, he has 2 Mark of the Wilds now. I mean, you're starting to feel probably pretty good here. Yeah, I mean, you must think that there's some sort of activatable for that that Ancient Watcher at this point in the game. I mean, were you worried about that? Were you thinking, okay, maybe I should get rid of this before it gets buffed?
Well, again,
it's sort of
been luck has been my theme for this game. It seems like I have a second Auctioneer. So at this point, if he manages to activate this with something like a Defender of Argus or a Mark of the Wild, I really the only thing I have to do is dig for sap. And with the second Auctioneer in my hand, it makes it a little bit easier. So
Shadow Step Leroy, the beginnings of that wombo combo.
And again, seeing that my thought process shining through of where I was worried about lethal damage, I shivved there to get a little bit more information about which direction I should be taking the game going into turn 8, because I need to be able to kill him either before he's able to get the combo, or I need to put myself out of range from the combo.
Yeah.
So it looks really weird that I ended up playing this turn this way, but my thought process again is to prevent myself from dying to Force of Nature and Savage Roar on turn 9.
Yeah.
Or to be able to kill my opponent before then.
Yeah, and I mean you have the Cold Blood, you have the Leroy, and you have the Shadow Steps. You already have a lot of damage in your hand. And I mean you have the Deadly Poison Weapon as well. So Argus, and he's going to Mark the Wild the Argus as well. So that does give him 2 fairly powerful taunt minions. Now, seeing this, does your heart sink a little bit? I mean...
well, again, I'm sort of sitting in the same spot. I really need to draw some powerful stuff to be getting this game going. But 2 Shadow Steps and a Leroy now, at this point, again, luck being the theme for this game, I can actually be able to use this Cold Blood to push through for damage instead. So card draw on the Eviscerate.
That's a really good draw.
Eviscerate's a pretty good one. Sap would have been good as well. Backstab would have also been good. This way I have to pay life. So what I've realized at this point is that it's not possible for me to sustain through a Force of Nature and Savage Roar.
Okay.
So I kind of just have to go for it and hope that he doesn't have it.
Yep, makes sense. I mean, there is always a certain point. It's like the point of no return in every game where you just have to kind of just realize that you need to go for it. You can't always just play safe because sometimes playing safe.
You'll also notice I actually made a small mistake this turn. I chose to attack the 5/2 instead of attack the 4/5, which was eviscerated prior. So I actually end up taking an additional point of damage.
Yeah. But really, I mean, he's got nothing. He can't do anything at this point.
And this is just, again, good deck building plus luck plus proper play is the winning combination here. So I think that Reynad played this game really well. I like that what his game plan was at every step going along the way, but he just drew really poorly. He had no gas the whole way through. It was just mid-range threat after mid-range threat, and I was able to defuse it. And then, of course, being the lucky
triple Leroy, man.
I can't deny my luck, right?
This is me, like punching my keyboard right now, just being so angry at the game, just cursing my luck and the RNG gods because double Shadow Step Leroy, man. Yeah, there's the concede. He knows what's up.
It's a pretty brutal one.
It's such a brutal turn. I mean, what was that? You did 22 damage?
Yeah, 22 damage.
Yeah.